Hi, everyone. Sarah Kaki here from Atlanta Divorce Law Group and our litigation manager, Jeanette Soltis. We are back for another Monday night Facebook Live with our We Won't Back Down series in response to the COVID-19 support we want to give our community and our clients. And tonight we have a question that Jeanette and I wanted to address that we're getting from a lot of our clients. And it actually is a very good question, as simple as it sounds. And it's, can I get divorced during this time? What would it look like to even go through the divorce process? And our courts are even handling this. Jeanette, thank you so much for joining me tonight so that we can get some answers here tonight for all of our clients. And
Absolutely. Thank
so,
you for having me.
Jeanette, this hasn't, from our perspective, this hasn't actually changed the process all that much. Let's first go through what a typical divorce process is, not the outliers out there where things get out of hand, but the majority of cases where 90% of cases fall into. Can you kind of walk us through that so we can kind of set the stage for what has been different and what hasn't been through the COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, so right now in a typical divorce case, the biggest differences that a typical person is going to see is just their initial meeting with their attorney will likely be by Zoom. And then if they end up in mediation, that will likely be by Zoom. Otherwise, the process is nearly identical. We've had e-filing as mandatory for a while, so we are all used to filing everything through the online systems, and service of process is still working. The process is really very similar. Most conversations would be by email and phone with clients and preparing documents, and we're able to get all of those steps done virtually.
Yeah, I mean, really, for most cases, we file electronically anyway. We continue to do that. We wait for the clerk of court to give us the e-filed documents that have been stamped by them back, so that we can start the service of process, which is serving the other side with the divorce papers. Have we seen a slowdown at all from the clerk's offices here in the Atlanta area counties?
I've not seen any delay in getting filings processed, and then there are still process servers who are working. Sometimes we can also ask the other side to acknowledge service, so we're still able to get all of that done.
And I'm glad you mentioned the private process servers, because one of the questions I've had with a lot of clients is they've asked about, well, the sheriff's department doing this, and we've never really recommended anybody to use the sheriff's department. We've always said to use the private process server because you have so much more control over how service is done, and during this time, that avoids any delays as well, correct?
Correct.
And then really the next step is, if for those who aren't familiar with this, is typically once you are served, the other side gets some 30 days to respond. And sometimes it goes through discovery, which is just exchange of documents and exchange of some more information. And that's a court-guided process if it's done formally. Have you seen a slowdown in that process?
So right now there is an emergency order in place that lasts until mid-May, and it does toll the deadlines pretty much for everything, but it does specifically say discovery. That said, the vast majority of attorneys are still sticking with those deadlines and trying to move these cases forward. So in all of the cases that we have, it's a very small minority where the other side isn't still sticking to those deadlines and getting things done.
And really, after the discovery process, typically what we're facing is either the two attorneys from each side are negotiating, trying to help the parties reach a settlement, or that's aided through the mediation process. And
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about mediation. Our team has had a number of them, and you've had quite a few of them. How's that process been virtually? Because they've been moved over to Zoom at this point.
Yeah, so it's been very interesting. At first, there was some reluctance in the legal community to have these mediations by Zoom, but it turns out that this is really a fantastic way for us to be working. And in a typical mediation, your attorney and yourself would be in one conference room, the other side and their attorney would be in another, and then the mediator goes back and forth. Well, it turns out that within Zoom, you're able to recreate that exact same situation where I'm with my client in our little separate Zoom room, and the other attorney and client are in theirs, and the mediator goes back and forth. And at times when the attorneys need to have their own conference, the mediator controls it and creates a separate room. So really, it effectively works exactly the same way. I've been very impressed with how well it's working.
Well, also I love it because we have clients, and I know there's on the other end as well, that just do not want to be in the same building. When the relationship's broken down that much, and it's just the tensions are really high, they don't even have to be any longer in the same building, because typically in mediation that are in person,
Yeah.
all parties are inside the same building, and we're all trying to make sure nobody runs into each other as much as we can. And this is a beauty. The technology is allowing us to avoid that altogether. And for some people that are out of state that are going through this process, they don't have to travel.
Yes, and we're even doing some hearings by Zoom, and so that's been really fantastic for my out-of-state clients. And the Fulton County has something that other counties don't have called status conferences, where every once in a while you typically have to show up to the court and meet with a judicial officer to give an update on your case. And it's actually saving clients so much in attorney's fees to not have to have your attorney drive down to the Fulton courthouse, wait around until your case is called. Now we're doing these by Zoom, and it's so much more efficient.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that this turns out to be a game changer for the court system for the long run. Because, I mean, you made a great comment before we went live together, which was at first, a lot of the court system was kind of hoping this is just a little bump in the road, but it's turning out to be a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, most of us, are realizing that we're going to have a new reality for a while. And I think that when things first shut down, we were hoping this would just be a little blip and that things would get back to normal. But we're starting to realize that it's going to be some time before things are completely back to normal. And we have to find a way to move forward in our lives and our businesses, even with these obstacles. And because of technology, there's really very little that we cannot do in the legal system that we were accomplishing by physically going to the courthouse. And we're having conference calls with judges, and it's been really fantastic.
Yeah, that's part of all this, and sort of the hidden gift is the efficiencies that it's forcing on the system that is huge cost savings and time savings to the client. I mean, the Fulton County status conferences, I think, is a really, really exciting one. Jeanette, talk to me about, in the discovery process, some of the cases that are a little bit more complicated. We typically, our office, and I know you lead the way on this big time for our team, is the forensic accounting and getting forensic accountants involved. How is that process still working during this time for some of the more complicated cases, how more high assets, or even some of the cases that require guardian ad litem because the child custody issues are a little too heated?
Yeah, so as I think initially, as we were all figuring out how to work remote, there was a slight delay as far as working with experts and even working with courts and other attorneys. But now that we have therapists and forensic accountants, and I think pretty much all of us have now figured out how to use this technology, figured out how to work from home and access files from home, I'm finding that we're able to get so much done, even in the cases where we have experts working with us. And I've had Zoom conferences with forensic accountants. I even have some cases where we have a custody evaluator who's a psychologist who is meeting with the children through Zoom and looking at the home through Zoom. So we're still able to get a lot done on those cases as well.
That's really fantastic. And I think that like we said, most divorce cases end up in mediation or settlement conferences. They don't end up before a judge to decide upon the case. And since there is still limitations on having a full trial, I mean, that is a real limitation right now, and most of those are being postponed. What I'm finding interesting is for the complicated cases, or the ones that the tensions are really running high, there is more incentive now to not leave your future in the hands of a judge and try to come to a compromise on your own. Have you seen a little bit of that too?
I have, and there's also the availability of arbitration, and that can be done virtually if everybody agrees. So there's so many ways that we can still get this done.
So what about when the parties sign off on, they agree on everything, they sign off on everything, whether they're filing jointly as uncontested or they're going through their attorneys through a mediation or a settlement amongst themselves, and they sign off and send everything off to the courthouse? Have you seen a delay in because then the next step is to give the judge time to review everything, sign off on it, and finalize the divorce. Have you seen any slowdowns there?
Overall, I haven't. I have seen a few judges being slower to sign off on final orders, but overall, I think it's pretty much the same efficiency, some even quicker since there's fewer matters that they're hearing right now. I think while the jury trials that aren't happening, so civil matters where we don't need to have a jury are moving through quicker in some situations.
Well, that's fantastic. And Jeanette, thank you again so much for joining me. I know that, the divorce process is a overwhelming process to begin with. And then to add the pandemic on top of it makes it even more emotionally straining. But for those who are in a dysfunctional situation, an unhealthy situation, and the decision has been made, their heart has been made, and they don't want to wait for the whatever time period this may last to move forward with their lives. I'm hearing from you, and I'm seeing it in our team and the work that you guys are doing for our clients. There's no reason that you can't move forward with your life at this point.
Exactly. And I know that the situation right now with people being at home or just the stress of the situation is taxing on a lot of relationships, and also especially relationships where there's domestic violence or any kind of abuse involved. So for those individuals who are even in a worse situation right now, you're not stuck. We can still get you out of this situation. And judges are still hearing emergencies. It just looks a little bit different in how that's done, but we can still help you.
Thank you, Jeanette, and everybody out there. If you need consultation, if you need any further advice or help with us through this process, do not hesitate to reach out. We're here for you, and we'll join you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.